to 5 things on your screen.
Yeah.
1 is target market, 2 is logo design, 3 brand colors and palette, 4 typography and fonts, 5 where and how to use your brand. So if you have a preference on where we're going to spend the most time today, I'd love to hear what you have in mind. All right. Sounds like everybody is really not very opinionated today.
I think for us, 5 would probably.
Fantastic. Okay, where and how to use your brand. Great. You guys already have a logo that's pretty sophisticated and pretty cool, and you've got a lot of brand equity, which is great. That's a wonderful thing. Michael, your target market sounds great. We'll spend some time on that as well. Number 1, target market. Great. Sounds good. And we'll also kind of relate that to your brand as well, as we're talking about the other aspects of your brand, how they relate to your target market and what they're looking for. Yeah, you do have a lot of potential markets, Michael. You've got everything from military to high tech to everybody else. So, a whole bunch of things. So 1 and 5 for Adila. Sounds good. So everybody is not that much interested in the technical aspects of this, just mostly in the theory of where and how and why to use your brand and how to make it work for you. So how it applies to marketing. 1 and 5, please. Thank you. Okay, great. Good to know. All right. Okay, so I did a poll on LinkedIn, very unscientific, 37 votes. Basically what level of branding is helpful to sell a product or service in the aviation industry. I will tell you, when we used to talk to people years and years ago, a lot of folks would check that first box and say aviation marketing is all about the individual deal. Branding has nothing to do with it. I don't care who I'm buying from. I just care what I'm buying. That has changed, I think, over the past few years. People want a company with a strong reputation standing behind products and services. I don't know if that's changed or if people are just more interested in what those things are. So I don't know how you guys feel about any of that, but I'd love to hear your theories as well. I got an interesting comment from Philip Koval, who's actually, in aviation media, talking about TV news and other things. That was an angle that I hadn't even considered when I asked the question, but he had a really good point that with all the fake news and all of the stuff running around these days, people want to know that their information is coming from a legitimate or a trusted source. And I think your brand has everything to do with trust. What is the reputation that stands behind the brand? What do you know? What do you do? All of those kinds of things. So that's all pretty interesting stuff. Okay, so moving on. All right, so today, of course, we've got a lot of things to cover in an hour, and we're not going to get it all done, but I'm going to give you some resources about how to dive into some of these other areas if you would like. So that's all very interesting. Okay, so what is the goal of branding? If you asked, 20 people, you'd get 25 different answers, right? For our purposes for today, I think the goal is really to shorten the sales cycle. If my whole goal when I'm working with a client is basically to help them sell more stuff. That's our mission. That's our objective. That's, you simplify it down to the common denominator of what makes a company successful. It's having good customers and having repeat customers and all of those things, and having this sales cycle be shorter so that they're able to generate more revenue, hire more people, build more products, develop more products, do more R&D. All of that other stuff is really the engine of the industry. So helping people sell more stuff is our mission. If you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So a brand to me is a hammer, or a tool that helps with that process. So we're going to talk about branding and how it is used in each aspect of this cycle. All right. So any thoughts about where your brand may be doing the most or the least amount of work? Are you using your brand for prospecting, approaching, your holding pattern? If you've been to our last workshop, you know what that is. If you don't know what that is, I'll just briefly say that is the time between first approach and a transaction, the time that they actually write you a check. Sales, referrals, and testimonials. Where do you think your brand is the most or the least important in this cycle? I don't know if anybody has an opinion on that or that they're willing to share. You can share in the chat, or you can just pipe up if you'd like. Again, we got a small group. Prospecting, okay. Good answer. You want people to know who you are, and a lot of times people will look up your website because they know who you are, and they know who you are because of their brand, because you've seen them at a trade show or something like that. That's a good use of that. Introducing a new product. Okay. Excellent. Good thoughts. I'm going to share our theory on this. Now that I've asked you guys all for your thoughts, I kind of think in prospecting, we want to do minimal branding, because if people don't know who we are yet, the thing that they're the most interested in is what can we do for them? So, when we do our initial advertising, if someone asks us to design an ad for them, it's going to be about the customer and it's going to be about the problem. It is not going to be a flaming, spinning big logo, right? In fact, your logo may not even appear on the first page or the first screen or the first view of an initial advertisement that we're making. So I think, prospecting is probably where we want to do minimal branding. And then when we do an approach, maybe just a little bit more. Once they're in a holding pattern and we've already approached them, then we want to make sure that every time we talk to them, every time they get an email from us, every time they get see a social post from us, it's recognizable. They see who that is, and we're building that brand equity as we're building that credibility and going through the sales cycle. So this is where we do moderate branding. During the sale, there's even more branding. So this is where the brand really comes through. This is why we are the best choice as opposed to any of the other options you have on the market. This is why you should choose us. And then the very most branding is when we're doing we're asking for referrals and testimonials. So if we do like a referral or testimonial package for you, where we're sending things to your existing customers, that's where we do all the swag, all the coffee mugs and binders and other fantastic things that people usually do at the front end. We like to do that at the back end because these are people who already know, like, and trust us, and we want to just drive that home and brand our customers. So if somebody walks into the office of an ABCI customer, we want somebody to go, wow, you've got binders all across this thing. You've got a bookshelf full of books from us. You've got a lot of physical items, coffee mugs, other things from ABCI. So they get curious about that. And, that leads to those conversations that lead to referrals and testimonials. So that might be a bit of a reversal from the conventional thinking on branding, but that's our story and we're sticking to it. John, you're laughing. Thoughts on that? All right, we'll continue on. And okay, so your target audience, this is the thing that a lot of you guys, including it looks like Adila and Jesse and Katie and Michael, this is the primary thing. And, we talked about this a lot when we did prospecting. We talked about this a lot in holding pattern as well. So an effective brand is not about you. It is not about your company. It is not even about your product. It is not an ego scenario, right? It's about your customers and what they think about you. This is a reversal from what a lot of people think. They think, well, I want everybody to know me. I want everybody to know our products. I want everybody to know everything there is to know about us. But that's a great way to turn people off. they don't care about you, to be honest, until they know what you can do for them. There's the whole theory in marketing about what's in it for me. That's the only thing that people care about in a first encounter is this person going to try to sell me something? Does this person have a solution to a problem I'm having? Is this someone that can help me or hurt me or is going to try and eat my lunch or whatever? And you want to make sure you come down on the side of the equation of you're an interested party. You want to help them. You want to do what you can do for them, right? And so you want to know their problems, their ambitions, their desires, all of that stuff. If you look at some of the great brands in the world, like Coke, Harley Davidson, other things, they will not even talk about the product at all. They talk about the customers, what they're doing. They're having fun. They're at a ball game. With Harley Davidson, they're having fun on a weekend, hanging out with their friends. They're doing their thing. They're living the dream, right? They're doing what they want to do. So you want to talk about how your product will help them achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve. So, the objective. And, with a lot of charter companies, this is very different. So you look at this from the point of view of somebody who is selling aircraft to owner operators, and their customers love airplanes. They are airplane aficionados. They love everything there is about them. They want to know all about all of the specs and the performance and everything else. But if you're talking about charter operators, sometimes they'll try to sell the same way as a broker that sells to owner operators. And they're talking about performance and all this other stuff about the airplane. Charter customers don't care. They want to get to the destination in the quickest, most convenient, most luxurious way. They care about the experience. They care about the interior. They do not care what avionics you're rocking, right? They do not care. Other than, how fast can I get to the destination? They don't care how fast the airplane flies or any of those things. So, yeah, it is always about the customer. Totally, Jacqueline, you're absolutely right. So you want to think of your brand as a visual shorthand for the key promise that you make. And if you are like Michael and you have a number of different audiences that have a number of different objectives, you're going to have to be a little bit more general, a little bit more abstract in your branding than if you have a very specific brand. Another question some people come up with is, should I brand my company or should I brand my products? And whenever that's a question, the answer is always brand the smallest common denominator, right? Because it's about your customer. So 3M, as an example, big company with a lot of different brands, they make Post-it notes. And I had a stack of Post-it notes. I lost it. But anyway, you know what a Post-it note looks like. We don't need a visual example of that. What it does is it helps people organize things. It helps people be more efficient. It helps people remember things that they need to remember. People don't care about 3M. They care about Post-it notes, right? So if you are investing in your brand, you want to think in terms of the smallest possible entity that your brand could represent. So in most cases, that would be the product, right? And most people that come to us in the aviation industry are more concerned with branding their company than they are branding their product. And I think that's another thing that kind of defies conventional wisdom that's helpful. Is if you think about, how do I brand the smallest possible entity here? Any questions or thoughts about that section? We're going to next jump into some of the ways that we do this or some of the mechanisms that we can use to make this happen. So it does get a little bit technical, but this is kind of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and how we're going to go about that. So jumping in, colors, right? We're going to do a little bit of a field trip here and show you some tools that you can use in a product called Canva. Canva has some free options, and if you are an ABCI client, you already have a pro version of Canva, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can go to canva.com/colors, and it's got a bunch of really neat tools here. So, one of them is a color palette generator. So if you already have, well, first of all, let's talk about color meanings. We'll start at the left side of the screen anyway, because we're talking about, who your customer is, what they want, what motivates them, what demographics they're in, those kinds of things. So, if you start thinking about color meanings, you can think about what are they after. So, if you're talking about in aviation, one of the most common colors is blue. And the reason is because, it symbolizes the sky. It is also a big color in terms of trust. And, if you look at different colors within the blue spectrum, they are more or less like that. If you think about bankers, they're always wearing navy suits and stuff like that. So these are all different ways of finding out more about different color choices and what they mean to different people. And all of this has been going on, and it actually varies a little bit. If you asked Adila about colors, she probably would have a slightly different version of this than I would. So if you're a global company, you're going to want to think in a different way and do testing with slightly different groups than if you are a US-based company that only has US-based customers. So all of this is really, really cool. It's really fun to learn about this. You can spend as much time as you have picking colors and getting into the various shades and the various color combinations and things like that. So you want to pick colors that denote what you want to communicate about your brand. So if somebody wants to give me an example in the text, if somebody wants to be we need a victim from the studio audience. Maybe with a product or service that you want to talk about in terms of color. All right, so Michael. Michael has a very innovative company. So, of course, we want to recommend that you want to okay, and aircraft management, we'll get to that next. So first of all, we're going to talk about innovation, and then we're going to talk about aircraft management. And Jesse, if you could tell me if it's corporate aircraft management or general aircraft management or airliners or whatever it is that you're talking about. If you could give me a little bit more information, that will be helpful while we're talking about Michael, because I know his business a little bit, so we can talk about that. Okay, so Michael has a new innovation in the aviation industry. It's a vehicle that is not in, it hasn't been checked out by the FAA. We don't have a operating model for this yet. So, a big factor for you is going to be trust. So, of course, my go-to color for trust is navy blue. And, that's one that is real easy to pick out, and it's used a lot in the aviation industry. Another reason you might love navy blue or, something very close to it is because it makes you fit in with the other people in the industry when it may not look like you do. So navy, midnight, a lot of other things like that are fantastic. So, this is basically, going to be a little bit higher contrast than in navy. I really, really like navy, midnight, the whole range of dark blue to black, because it is such a nice foil for other colors as well. So I think, a dark blue would be a great choice for you. And I know you already have that in your palette, or something very close to that. I don't remember the precise shade that we picked for you. And then also a green shade, because your innovation is environmentally friendly or has the potential to be. So, I would also pick a green shade for that. And there's also a lot of really new brands that are doing a lot of things with pops of green or neon green, like Garmin is using green now. That's really cool.
So question.
Yeah.
If you use multiple colors, how do you determine what's going on? Is it based on the largest amount of one color versus another or something else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're going to talk about, what we call, there are two ways of saying primary colors, because everybody who's been to an art school knows, red, yellow, green are your primary colors, but your primary brand colors are the colors that you use the most. And then you have secondary colors, which are the colors that you use only when your primary colors are present. And then you have tertiary colors, where you would only use when you need another accent beyond your first two colors, if that makes sense. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. But yeah, hold that thought and ask me again if I don't answer it in the next section. But let's talk about Jesse and your aircraft management for general aviation aircraft. So general aviation aircraft buyers are most interested in adventure and fun, and they're also interested in safety, but they're going to want to look for some of the traditional colors in the industry, like the Cub yellow is super iconic for general aviation. Also, red is great because red is about action and adventure and excitement and so on. And there's a lot more information, of course, in your worksheets. I think this is page 3. About what these are, and also in the application. If you go to canva.com/colors, you can look up any color and see what they're saying about it. This is going to be kind of a Western bias. I believe Canva was started by somebody in Australia, but they were educated in the West. So a lot of the information in here I've noticed has kind of a Western bias, or at least an American-ish, Canadian-ish sort of bias as far as colors go. But most of our clientele, I think, on this call are more Western than global. But you also want to take that into account as well. So I would go with at least one color that is either yellow or red if I were doing a general aviation company. And I would also include a blue in there, and I'll tell you why in a minute. As we talk about trust, and also about you want to have something in common with other aviation companies that you're doing business with and that people associate with your brand as well. All right, so other tools in this toolbox, color meanings, of course, color wheel. You want to look for things that are across from each other. So Jesse, since we just suggested red or yellow, blue is right directly across. And the reason for this is because there's a bunch of people on this planet. My brother is one, my son is one. I guess I'm genetically lucky that I can see colors, but there's a lot of people that can't, or that have a reduced capacity to see certain colors. So you're going to want to pick two that are either across from each other on the color wheel, or at least close to across from each other. And then you're going to want to pick one and use it in a more or less saturated way. So one's going to have more white in it and one's going to have more black in it. So if you use a navy blue and then a light yellow, those are going to be high contrast, and even people who can't see color can see that combination, right? So your primary and your secondary color, you want to have a lot of contrast between those two, and you can use this tool to do that. All right. Another tool that you can use, color palette generator. So let's say I told you yellow and you hate yellow. Okay, I get it. I'm not a fan of orange, but there is an orange on the planet that I'm sure I like if I decide that I have to use orange. Besides the fact that it's not about what I like, right? It's about our customers. It's not about us. So if I type in orange, there's a whole bunch of combinations here that I could use using orange, and using some nice contrasts with orange that are more and less popular. And I can click on any of these and see how many people liked these of the people using Canva. So I can see, okay, not very many people like Flaming Flower, but a lot of people liked Forever Fields. So, if you're looking for things that are going to be popular, or things that are going to resonate well with a particular audience, again, these are Canva users, so it's not scientific. You want to test with your own market as well, but this gives you a starting place for that. Let's say you already have a logo or something like that. So you can use the palette generator to figure out what those colors are that you already have and riff off of those. So we just made a new logo for John Davies. I don't know if you're on the line, but if you are, these are the colors in your logo. I haven't given you these yet, but this is what they are. Madison, Dodger Blue, Casper, Curious Blue. And this is not perfect because, again, this is software. So it's going to pick it up from what it can see. And that will give you the hex values for those colors. All right. So on this example, primary color is navy blue, right? Secondary color is a light blue. Tertiary color is white. And they're all very high contrast from each other. And they look good together. You know, that's what we're after. So any thoughts or questions about these tools or about Canva or about how that works or how you'd figure that out? All right, we'll go back to the slides.
Yep, very nice. Thanks, Paul. I've been wondering how to do that, and I guess I need to spend more time in Canva.
Oh yeah, it's a great tool. I love this. So it's really, really fun. Now this graphic, and this is actually on page 4 of your workbook, because it's probably easier to see up close than it is, you know, on the screen here. These are airline logos. I don't think anyone has done this for business or general aviation. I wish they would. Maybe we should for next year or something like that. And they did basically a survey of what colors are aviation companies using and where are they using them. So, you know, we had talked about that Western bias. That is this group of colors right here. Navy blue, red, you know, followed by yellow, green, and other shades of blue. If you were selling in Asia, you'd be looking at much heavier red, lighter on the blues, but, you know, a lot of the same colors as well. So this kind of gives you a thought about where your market is, what colors the airlines are choosing. And a lot of times we can look at bigger companies. This is the neatest trick. A lot of the aviation companies don't have a huge budget and they don't have a lot of money to do market testing or anything else. So what we can do is look at bigger companies in our same market and see what they do. And that gives us the same result as if we were able to do all of that studying ourselves on how this works. So this gives you an idea. You know, I always like to include a blue in an aviation company unless there's a reason not to, because you want to look like you're part of the club. You know, you want to look like you belong in this party. But also you're going to want to look for something that's unusual. So, you know, if you do a red and a blue, you're going to look like everybody else. But if you choose a red and a green, you know, that will be a little bit more unique and might serve your purpose a little bit better in terms of being a little bit more memorable. So that's another consideration to take into account when you're choosing your colors and so on. All right. So basically this comes down to, you don't just choose your favorite colors. When you're picking your brand colors, this should be about your brand. You know, what do you want to communicate to people? What is the big promise that you're making? What is your audience expecting from you, and how can you deliver on those expectations? That builds trust. Every time you set an expectation and meet it, that is how you build trust over time. And, you know, so you want to be super consistent about where you use your logos, how you use your logos, how you use different colors in your marketing and other things. Everybody should, I think, have a primary and a secondary color, and most people should have a tertiary color. You know, I think those just are really, really good for making a harmonious representation of your brand. Some companies are black and white, and that is their brand. And there is nothing wrong with that if that's a decision that you've made based on who your audience is, and you want to stand out. That is perfectly fine. But if you want to have, I would suggest that you have at least 3 colors so that you can do icons and you can do other things consistently across your website and social media and other things that make sense, so that you're not just choosing colors at random based on what you're doing. A lot of photographers, for example, their brand colors are going to be black and white, and then all of the color comes through in their photos and they really pop and they really look good because of that. So, if you are focusing on something where you're using a lot of other colors for whatever reason, or your products maybe are multicolored or whatever, then you may want to choose a really, really basic color palette for your brand. Test your colors and consider accessibility. And when I say accessibility, ask a colorblind friend if they can see your logo, if it makes sense to them. And if they can see, your website, your other things like that. Okay. What about branding by segment, military versus civilian? This would be where you may want to think about having 2 different product lines, a military product line and a civilian product line. Tough Guard, as an example, they're a client of ours that does paint coatings and things like that. So their brand colors for their auto line is red. Their brand color for their military brand is, I'm sure you can probably guess, it's a military green. So, if you can divide your product at some point, or at least divide representations of your product in some way, I'd keep your primary branding super simple, like Tough Guards is black and white. And then each of their product lines has a different color depending on who they're selling to. So that we may want to take a similar approach with DBT Aero. That might be a way to do that. Other questions so far? We got one more slide in colors and then we'll take a quick break and do something fun. All right. So color consistency. How do you manage to keep the same colors across printed materials and t-shirts and hats and coffee mugs and websites and social media and people on tablets and phones and different monitors? I've got 2 monitors in this room, and if I move this screen to this screen, it's going to be very different colors as I see it. So how am I going to be able to tell for sure that I'm using the right colors? One way is to use a bunch of different numbers and codes. If you use a tool like Canva, they will tell you what the different codes are for the colors that you're using. So the PMS, that top code, is your Pantone scale. And I don't know exactly what the acronym stands for, but it's basically, Pantone is a monopoly in the United States of ink colors. And most of the printers and other things will use a Pantone color scale. So if you're getting something printed professionally, you'd use the Pantone scale. CMYK is used by some software. RGB and hex are used by different kinds of software. So you can make sure that it matches across different kinds of software. It's not always going to look the same, depending on the brightness or the settings on somebody's monitor. I always recommend that people, thank you, Michael, it's Pantone matching system. For those of you who needed to know what the PMS meant, it's not what you think, it's Pantone matching system. So anyway, when I worked for Wells Fargo, we were all issued, we went to a half-day brand camp. Anybody who was new in marketing or any customer-facing job at Wells Fargo went to a half-day of brand camp. And one of the things that you got at brand camp was a neat little backpack with swag in it. And one of the things in the swag was the Wells Fargo color swatches printed in Pantone colors so that you could do press checks. And what you would do is, if you commissioned any printed items or any clothing or anything else, you had to match them against these swatches and make sure that they were perfect. And if they weren't perfect, you send them back to the printer. So, as long as you're providing them with these colors, they should come out no matter what you're getting done. And if they can't guarantee color matching, then don't buy things from that vendor, right? And that's trade shows, that's swag, that's printing, everything, right? All right, cool. Carrying on. Anything else on color? Other questions, thoughts, concerns? Okay. Typography. The example that I always like to use is if somebody sent a ransom note in Comic Sans, it would not be taken seriously. Typography is important. It really conveys a lot more meaning than people expect based on the fonts and the typography that you choose. And I know Michael could probably teach this section because we've been going through this a lot on, a lot of questions that he's been having with his brand and so on. We're not going to go into that much detail today, simply because we don't have a ton of time, and a lot of that gets very technical and very specific. And I do have an answer to your question about the Google fonts for later. We'll talk about that as well. But for today, we'll just suffice it to say that the fonts also have tools in Canva. There's in the Canva University, and I know I lean on them a lot, but that's because it's so easy, and a lot of their tools are also free. There are courses on typography in Canva about, which fonts you might use under certain circumstances and so on. So when we do a new brand, we like for people to consider both of these types, serif fonts and non-serif fonts. So serif fonts have what we call hats and shoes. That's the technical term, is hats and shoes. It's not the technical term. I don't know what the technical term is other than serif. But they have tops and bottoms of the letters that stick out a little bit more. And what the function of those serifs is to help you follow a line of text with your eye. So if you're reading a paragraph of serif text, you can read faster and you will retain more than if you are reading a paragraph of sans serif text. Does that make sense? You guys follow me so far?
I hear you, but it doesn't make sense.
Okay. This example doesn't do it for you.
No, it may for most folks.
Okay. Basically, it just gives you a horizontal reference. So if you're following the line with your eye on this line, it's easier to follow than this line where your eye is going up and down.
Except I learned to speed read, so it changes things for me.
Okay.
Actually, hey, Paula.
Yeah.
The studies that I've seen show that if you have the beginning and the end of the correct letter at the beginning and the end, and you have the ups and downs, the ascenders and descenders in the right place, you could actually, so like in the second line where it says graphically, if you switch the R and the A or the C and the A, people who are speed reading wouldn't see those differently. They'd still see graphically.
Yep.
Because of the ascenders and descenders in the beginning and end. So your eye is actually seeing a pattern of ascenders and descenders and saying, oh, that's this word, which is why spell checking is so difficult sometimes. You can read the same text over and over and never see the mistake.
Right. I've actually seen some games where they do that. And it always is in sans serif font because you're looking at the first and last letter and your brain is filling in the gaps. But in a serif font, it doesn't work as well, for me anyway. But whenever I've seen those puzzles, they've always been in a sans serif font because that otherwise this will look wrong to you faster than this will look wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because the serifs and the ascenders and descenders create a different pattern.
All right. Okay. And Stella says, yeah, it's actually the opposite. It's easier to read sans serif for me, so not true for everyone. And Ali asked the question, can we use different colors and fonts on a specific holiday post? And yeah, we're going to get to that in just a minute. So we're talking about right now establishing consistency, and then we're going to talk about when to break the rules. once we establish consistency and set up our rules and then decide why the rules are important and all of that. So yeah, great questions. And also serif can be lost in small print. Serif can go smaller. So this is a little bit more versatile. A sans serif font is more versatile than a serif font. Some brands choose to use two. They want to use a sans serif for their headings and a serif font for their body text so that people can follow a block of text or follow a paragraph, right? Okay, moving on. Basically, the point of this slide and the point of this entire exercise, this is actually page 7 in your workbook, is to consider a serif font and a sans serif font. I think everybody should have at least one sans serif font. You can do without a serif font, but a serif font is more modern. It looks more up to date. If you look at somebody's website that is all done in Times New Roman, as an example, it looks kind of 1980s, and those kinds of things. So I think a sans serif font, if in doubt, is always my go-to, unless they're using a lot of text or they are a publication or something like that where they want to go back to that tradition and convey that with their fonts. Okay, so typography checklist. I will let you guys do that on your own because of time, and also because that's not the thing that we're here for, unless anybody actually is. Okay, aviation industry logos. These, I think, all do an excellent example of conveying the fact that they are in aviation. 9 out of 10 of them have an airplane somewhere in the logo. 9 out of 10 of them have an airplane or an airplane part anyway, somewhere in the logo. Most of them are very high contrast. Most of them are sans serif. Most of them are really cool in one way or another. So and a swoosh. Jacqueline, that's an excellent point. They all convey motion, usually upward motion in this direction, because people want to improve your life going this way. So that's a powerful symbol that a lot of people are using. So, and this comes back to the whole point of when do you follow the rules and when do you break the rules? The rules are there because they work. They do make people feel a certain way if you do what is expected and if you deliver on those promises and things. So I think all of these do a nice job of that. And if you're looking for examples, you can look no further than our very smart clients who have logos like these, right? Okay. Logo checklist. Some of the things that you want to consider with these are, could you do an ice sculpture with your logo? Could you do, think of the strangest thing that you might ever want to do with your logo. Can you do that? Some of the mistakes that we made, I'm going to share this with you, as embarrassing as it is, and I'm not going to change our logo because I love our logo. We have so much time and energy and everything else invested in this that we would never change it. But some of the mistakes that we made, or things that we didn't consider when we built it the first time, we used a gradient. So we went from white to black in this line here. This makes it impossible to do engraving or stamping or anything along those lines. That just basically takes a whole set of printing and other things, 3-dimensional stuff, off the table for us using this logo, or we have to make an adaptation of this logo in order to do that. Another thing is we've got some very thin lines here and here that make it really, really hard to reduce this as small as we want to go, sometimes for an icon or for a favicon for a website, which is usually like 64 by 64 pixels. So if we do that, we just use this little section here. We just use our little airplane going up. Embroidery also. Thank you, Jacqueline. That's an excellent point. They do have some embroidered effects that they could do sort of like a gradient, but it looks a little funny. So, it's not the best thing to include a gradient in your logo unless you really, really, really want to, or really have to, or have the tradition of that.
And actually, it's not we. I was the one who designed the logo. So it was my fault.
Okay. No, I approved it. I love it. I think it's great. And I would never change it in a million years. But, those are some things that now, whenever we're doing logos for people, we are, very seriously looking at those types of things and saying, you're setting yourself up for some headaches in the future.
Yep.
Okay. Fun with logos. And this is to Ali's point. When is it acceptable to have fun with your logo and to deviate from the rules that you just set and to break the rules you just set? Google does it all the time. And Google can, because their logo is so recognizable that people would recognize it anywhere. And it's also incredibly well placed. So you go to Google, that's what you're expecting to see. And that's what you're going to see no matter what it looks like. So they do the Google Doodles, and that's a great way to enjoy a little bit of crowdsourcing and other things, and celebrate holidays and so forth. Avion Trace does a nice job of this. They have a very distinctive and detailed logo, but they do this for Christmas and the 4th of July and St. Patrick's Day and other things like that. And I think it's really cool because their logo is very recognizable no matter what we do to it in terms of color. But we're only changing one thing. We didn't change the typography. We didn't change the placement. We didn't change anything else. We just changed the color. So if you're going to break rules, don't break more than one of them at a time, right? And, that's another thing is, if you decide to use a different font or whatever that is not in your brand, do it for a reason and make sure it sticks. Like if you're using a font that's very uncommon, you may want to do that as an image. Whereas in most cases, you want to use that as native text, like on a web page, you want to use native text so that the search engines can pick up on it and can read it. You want to use readable text in the technology you're using. But sometimes you want to break that rule and you want to use a very unique font for a very unique reason. And in that case, you'll want to do it as an image so that it won't break in different technology or different things. All right. Other brand images, these are not logos, but these are very recognizable. So if you know Jeremy, you know what he looks like. You would know him if you met him anywhere. And he uses his face, as a visual image that is incredibly recognizable. He does a lot of public speaking. He teaches classes. Everybody knows who Jeremy is. If you've ever been to the Spirit of St. Louis Airport, or if you've ever taken a class on aircraft appraising, you have seen his face. And he makes full use of it. And I think it's fantastic. We've done some caricatures and other things with Jeremy. It's not his logo, but it is a brand image that is just as strong and just as cool. We had these Mustangs commissioned using our logo for a couple of the reasons that we mentioned. If we want to use our logo on a dark background, this makes it stand out a lot better. And it also is a way that we can have some fun with social media and other things where our logo is appearing in different settings in different ways. So, think about different brand elements that you can use that are not logos, different icons and other things that kind of convey that meaning without using a logo. Okay, other brand opportunities. I am always, if you ever see me working, wearing a navy blue to black blazer, somewhere in that range. I have a whole closet full of anywhere from navy, midnight, black, and so on. And I also wear the lapel pin. And we send lapel pins to all of our clients. So if you ever see someone with this lapel pin, they're an ABCI client. So there's a lot of things you can do with clothing, whether or not you're using uniforms that are a really good way to convey that meaning. Our favorite restaurant, everybody wears black. They wear their own clothes. So, they don't have a uniform, but they're all wearing black shirts, black pants of some kind. And they all kind of riff on it. They all kind of go their own direction, either with a t-shirt or a thing with a collar or whatever. And, they'll either wear a skirt or pants or shorts or, whatever their personality is. But it's always black. So, you want to figure out what are the parameters and what can people riff on that kind of makes it their own, right? This is an amenity kit. If you do charter or first class travel or anything like that, you can do an amenity kit. This is kind of a great way to think about also your customer welcome kits. If you want to think about that in terms of what can we include in these that are branded, what kind of swag can we include that they're going to use in their office or that they're going to use in their airplane or in conjunction with our product or service that other people are going to see and, that are cooler than what they could find on the market. Another thing is like die cut stationery, think outside the box. I mean, literally think outside the shape, what can you do to make some of those things really distinctive? You guys probably also have examples of ways to use a brand. I'm sure that you guys have probably thought of some that you use in your organization. I'd love to hear about them in the chat, or feel free to speak up. We've got, I guess on time, we've got about 9 minutes left. So we are getting close to the end, but we got a couple of minutes to spend here if anybody wants to share an example. I've seen a lot of really cool ones in the aviation industry. I've seen MRO kits that had like glass cleaner and little wrenches, or the little, what do you call those? The little screwdriver sets from an MRO company that look really, really cool. And they're a really nice amenity kit. And they're another way to extend your brand, especially for people that are spending a lot of money with you. You can spend some proportion of that on an amenity kit or something like that. That's going to give you a good thing.
Well, when we bought the aircraft from Cessna, they did a bang-up job of all the stuff they gave us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they gave you a shirt and a hat and a key ring, and I don't know what else was in there.
All kinds of pictures and a cleaning kit for the aircraft.
Right. Okay. Yeah, Jacqueline, it was a multi-tool, so great job. Good thinking on that.
It was a 12-in-1 branded tool item, and we had both the pocket size for pilots and one that could be kept on the aircraft or in a hangar or something of the like. So it was kind of a two-step.
Brilliant. That's really, really smart. Yeah, that's fantastic. I know one guy who, well, actually, he bought a client as a Thanksgiving gift. It was a custom shotgun that he had made. So, I mean, you can get as crazy as you want with some of these things, and that's cool. Somebody had a hand raised. I don't see it.
Yeah, I just pulled it down.
Oh, okay.
When I had an FBO, there was a aircraft detailer.
Uh-huh.
And Gary Privatera would always leave behind in the aircraft that he detailed different things, just little pens with his contact info, name and contact info, pads of paper. Post-its. Yeah. He had a letter opener. I still have 2 of those, 15 years later or whatever, because they're so handy. Mm-hmm. Just lots of little odds and ends, but he would leave different things because he was detailing the same aircraft, every month or 2. Mm-hmm. He had a variety of things that he would leave behind. Water bottle, little 8-ounce water bottles, and then he would put a little sticker over them that again had his information on it. So just lots of little odds and ends.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I really like going to FBOs and, seeing what's in the bathroom. They always have these little bottles of hairspray and combs and, I think it was, what was the FBO that Brad Elliott was working at? I remember he got Opie's My Private Jet nail polish and had little bottles of that in the women's bathroom. Just crazy stuff that you would never think of in a million years. And those are really, really fun. Yeah, I know they, Jacqueline, you mentioned they do cost money. And this is why, rather than distributing these at a trade show and just kind of handing them out to anybody that walks by, I love giving them to current customers or, new customers, because they have spent money with you already. They are a proven investment, and they are more likely to spend more money with you or refer somebody to you than anybody else. They say the money in the aviation industry is made after the sale, and that's because those subsequent sales cost so much less to acquire. So you want to spoil your current customers and spoil your future customers. At least make sure they're qualified before you start handing stuff to them. And make sure they're solidly in your holding pattern, rather than just simply shoveling things at people at a trade show. I think that makes a lot of sense. And that's a good point about the investment on these. All right. A brand brief, brand board, brand template, whatever you want to call it. These can be longer or shorter. A 1 page is kind of nice. We do these for all of our levels of clients once we get all of their brand established, so that they have a place to keep all of their details, and they can hang this on the wall, or they can hand this to people, and so on. So, these are things that you want everybody to know, that's working with you or working for you, or anything else, or any printer that you have. You can send them this and they will get it. In fact, you can even, rather than using these headings, you can put in some different instructions and say, we never do this, or we always do that, just so that you have all your laws established. Corporate grammar, that's a really good word, Jacqueline. I like that. And this, again, is rules that you don't want to break unless there's a darn good reason to do it. And only the boss gets to break the rules. People that are working with us don't get to break the rules unless they have approval, right? So rank has its privileges. We get to decide to do something outside the brand if there's a really good reason for it. So, all right. How do you measure the effectiveness of your brand? And we're getting real close on time, so we won't spend a ton of time on this, but I will send you some. There's a little bit more information in your packet. The best way, of course, is sales. Always ask people, how did you find us? What influenced you to make the decision today? If you can ask those questions, that's 1,000 times better than, or have those conversations, that's 1,000 times better than anything the software will tell you. But the software will tell you things like how many visitors to your website were using branded versus non-branded keywords. That means they're using your name. They know who you are. That's why they were looking for you. A lot of people, when we start working for them, most of their traffic is branded, and we want to make sure they're finding you for the problem you're trying to solve, not just your brand, but having a healthy ratio is a good thing. The other thing is, are people progressing from one phase to the next? Are you getting referrals and testimonials? This is the strongest brand relationship here. If you have a good brand, you're getting referrals and testimonials. That means people recognize you. People are finding it easy to pass your identity around. People are finding your brand recognizable enough to make a referral. They're remembering a testimonial and remembering to come find you when they need whatever it is that you have. Right, exactly. And encouraging referrals and rewarding those is really key to that as well. But like I said, I always start light, go heavier, 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 heavier as we go through this process. And this is the heaviest point for branding. But every one of these, they can tell you, why did we decide to move forward today? Is it because of something we said? And being a marketing company, we can ask these nosy questions because we're curious. But you can always usually find out what it is in particular that was the last thing that they touched before they decided to make a transaction, or before they decided to give a referral or a testimonial. All right. Yeah, exactly. And you want to make sure that you're doing those referrals and testimonials. And that's another thing we're going to cover when we do the referrals and testimonials workshop, is how to ask for them in a couple of different ways, and when to ask for them, and how to ask for them, right? Okay. All right. So that's pretty much it for today. We do have other workshops that are available on demand for our clients. You can also buy any one of them ad hoc if you wanted to just take one. But if you are a client, I really encourage all of our clients, the more you know, the better we'll do, the better we'll all do. And the better any one of us does, the better the industry does. So, I mean, it's a really small community that we are really interested in assisting. And the more we all know about marketing, the better we're all going to do. So if you're not in our marketing lab, we would welcome you to join us. And being a marketing company, that we're going to be sending you information about how to do that with some special offers as well if you're not currently a client. And if you are, thank you very much for being part of our marketing lab. You guys all make it so much better by sharing information and being part of this, and sharing the information in the industry as well. All right, so I'm going to stay on the line. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask, and then we'll jump off. I know some people have another meeting they got to go to, so thank you for joining us. I want to make sure we're respecting your time as well.
Thanks, Paula. Great workshop. You said you had an answer on fonts and the Google fonts and rendering on websites.
Yeah, I do. And I have it on my other computer, so I'll have to dig that up and send it to you.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't remember it is a longer answer than we would like. It's not a simple answer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's no guarantee of them being more readily available, but it is one factor in being more readily available in more places. So
if you really want consistency, stick to the 6 or whatever standard HTML fonts. And
right. And I would say, especially for if you're doing you are doing a lot of online material, emails and so on, we want to stick with one of the recognizable fonts as your body text on your website, probably. Yeah. And on body text for emails and things like that, because different devices are going to do different things with it. They also are going to want to blow it up for some people who want to make their text bigger and things like that. And if it's a standard font, one of those 6, it will work with those tools. So that's another good reason to do that.
Yuck. They need to hurry up and advance the technology.
Agreed. We should be able to pick crazy fonts and have them work everywhere, but that's not the case yet.
That's right. So, it should be embedded. I mean, that was the problem with my online company years ago, was the technology didn't exist, and so we had to hard code everything. And so we finally said, this is just too expensive. Well, about 2 years later, they had basically changed the internet specs, and a lot of this stuff was now part of the spec, and it was coded in, and it's like, now you finally get up to it. So
yeah, no kidding. It's really frustrating when you have an idea and you can't execute it. It's like, George Lucas in Star Wars, the first set of movies were just not what he wanted, but I'm sure that's like the frustration of his life, wanting to go back and redo those, but not having the same time and space and everything else to do that the way he wanted to the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is your George Lucas moment. We'll just
another moment.
Another. Not the first, I take it.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm a pioneer far too often, and it's really annoying.
Well, that's that is, I guess, your dharma. Is your place in the world is to push the rest of us along.
Oh well. Okay. Thank you. Well, I look forward to the longer answer, but I appreciate the short answer.
No problem. I will get that to you soon. Thank you for your patience on that. Yeah, Jacqueline, I totally agree. I actually moved to the bigger iPhone because the smaller iPhone was just too small to see. And I also got the bifocal contact lenses. I love those. Those are so nice. One of the world's best inventions, if you ask me.
That's good stuff.
It is. It is. It's really interesting.
Screens wear out your eyes enough, so now we've got to augment.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But yeah, that's one of the best inventions, I think, from the iOS, I think. Well, and they probably also have it on Apple as well, is that you can dial up and down your fonts So that's one of those things. And I've noticed my vision changes throughout the day. It starts out pretty good in the morning, and then it starts to get worse as the day goes on. So I'm like dialing things up.
Yep, vision fatigue, blue light issues.
That's probably what it is. I need to get the blue blocker glasses. I hate to admit the infomercials are right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, suggestions? Things to do differently next time on our next workshop? Suggestions for our next workshop?
We'll be there.
All right, cool. We'll be here. Yeah, Michael says, take the driver's license exam early in the morning. Yeah, I should do that. There you go.